Zealand Photo Book Award, and I've been able to witness the judging of those as well. So in addition to hearing experts talk about, you know, photo books and what makes them successful, I've also done a lot of research and asking people who have made books with us how they went about it. I've spoken to publishers, what they look for in books and how they go about designing them. I've spoken to the creators themselves, to graphic designers. So I'm going to bring a lot of that into tonight's discussion. And feel free to ask a question at any point. I'm happy to answer them along the way. So that's why I'm qualified to talk to you tonight. And what I'm going to talk to you about is basically how to create a photo, what I call a successful photo book, from the concept, and I'll talk about the book from the book creation process, from concept phase through to printing, through to design and printing. I think it's the perfect time for us to be talking about this because, as we've just discussed, a lot of you are in lockdown, or most people are spending more time at home at the moment. And the biggest obstacle we've found to people creating a photo book is that they never have enough time. Because people ask, how long does it take to create a photo book? Well, that's you know, changes very, very, very variable. But my feeling is that the longest part of the process is the selecting of the images to go in and getting the files prepared, not so much the design of the book itself. So I hope that tonight I can inspire you to maybe start a new photo project, or to go and look at past photos and photo collections and turn them into books. And I will now jump into the presentation that I've prepared. So I'll have a presentation to talk through, but I will also be demonstrating the software. A very short demonstration just to show you the basic functionality of Momento software. And then if anybody has any specific questions about any kind of technical elements on color management, profiles, and if you use Lightroom, I have my partner at Work and Play, Jeff, on the ready to assist at the end with some any questions that you have. So now I will jump into my presentation here. And tonight I'll use the presentation, but I will also jump out at some points to show you. I've got some physical books to show you here, so please let me know in a moment when I hold them up to the camera if you can see them okay. And I also have a short video I want to show you. As you can see, we're going to be talking about crafting a photo book from concept to design. And let's start at the very beginning with a basic overview of the process that you have to go through. To me, the most important part of the process is to define the purpose of your book. And that means once you're clear on that, that will guide everything else in the design process. So you need to be clear on what your subject is, what the rationale is behind your book, and also who the audience is. And for you guys, it might just be personal enjoyment in creating a book, creating a record, but I'm going to show you a few different book types in a moment to illustrate that point. Next step, surprise, surprise, is selecting the photos, which isn't as easy as it might sound, but not too hard either. Sequencing the photos, choosing the format for your book, and then the layout and design process. So I've just put together a list of some different types of books that you guys might be interested in creating. And I've got some samples to show you. So I imagine that many of you might be interested in creating a travel book right now, maybe for a bit of vicarious travel. This is just an example of one, a Mediterranean holiday. I just want to flick through so you can see a little bit of the book format, but also the inclusion of text in this is very important, and I think...
Excuse me, Libby, can you
Yes.
go back to full screen while you're showing us the book, please?
Yes, now I think... Yep,
If you click on the picture of our webcam, it will zoom in for you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think you guys can control how big I appear on screen. So there is, from my understanding, if you are in, is it gallery view? You can move the crop marks around, or on the sides, you can drag the screen to a better size.
Oh, it was just a matter of you had your other format of the types of folios as your big screen, as the big screen, and you were in one of the smaller ones. That was...
All right, so is that, that's better now then, isn't it?
Right.
Cool. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these books. I just thought I'd show you a few pages of each design. So with a travel book, you're recording a place and experience a time. I like the fact that in this one, they did weave in text, as you can see, either for, you know, as captions for naming the place or travel quotes. And while I'm there, I'm also going to show you that is what we call our lay flat paper stock. I know that's not really easy to see, but you can see that it has this hinge here and it lays completely flat. I'll show you that at the same time. This one, if you're a landscape photographer, this one is a book, and I'll just show you there. It's actually a beautiful linen cover material with large text embossing, and it's in our square format, grand square. And this is a book by Peter Eastway. I imagine some of you might read Better Photography or follow Pete's emails and workshops. So this was a book of his imagery from Canada when he went on holiday in Banff, or he went to a workshop there, and he's presented his images in a book format, in a portfolio style, but it's based on his landscape images. And I'm realizing that this is not as easy as it seems, as I thought it would be. But are you seeing enough there? Just a little bit?
Yep. Yep.
Excellent. Okay. This is something you might be interested in doing on a, I don't know, on an annual basis or every few years, is to create a portfolio of your own. And this is actually in a box, this one, clamshell box, so we can add one of your photographs, or you can design a box cover, or you can use any of our materials. So once again, this gentleman, who is Mr. John A. Brown, he has just gone, sorry, John H. Brown has gone through and selected his best images from the year and compiled them in a book in a very simple form, catalogue style, centered on the page. Another option is a catalogue. So this book, I don't know, do you guys, are you familiar with the Light Collective at all? They're a great bunch of aerial photographers from Australia. They hosted an exhibition a few years ago on their work that they shot in South Australia, Cat-Eye Tanda. And this was like a catalogue / self-published book to complement their exhibition. And what I think about, what I think is interesting about books that are used to complement an exhibition are that they can actually often sell more easily than the prints themselves, because they're at a much lower price point. So while this book, I believe, sold for around $90 or so, their prints were, you know, from $500 up to $1,500. So it would be easier to say yes to a book in this case. Okay, this is another self-published book, very recently published. I'll refer to it a few times later on, by a photographer in Sydney, as you can see, the proof book, but about the local wildlife in his area in the Sutherland Shire. And he'd been a wildlife photographer for many years, but was also studying the history of the area, and he compiled all of his work into this self-published edition. He also hosted it with, he also hosted an exhibition of the artwork and a book launch at the same time. And I believe sold about 40 copies on his opening night. So if you are, Dirk, this might be of interest to you. I'm not sure if everybody's interested, but self-publishing a book photo book is a viable option, especially if the content is locally based, I find. Okay, this is another one. This is maybe not what you might expect, but given you guys may have some time on your hand, I wanted to show you this one. It is basically a photo memoir / family history created by a son of his father's history in the war, and he scanned all the old negs and photos and even looks like whole pages of a photo album and turned it into a really beautiful keepsake. There we go. So you don't, photo books don't just have to be full of photos. They can have documents and maps and certificates and other graphics, as you'll see shortly. And another one, just one last one to show you a little bit of variety in size too. This is a little bit smaller, very appropriately created in square shape, because on the inside is the creator's, she's basically turned her Instagram feed into a printed record. So she was working on a 365 days of colour project, which she posted the results of daily online, and then at the end of the year she turned it into a book. So that's just another idea. So that just gives you a bit of inspiration for different projects you could work on. But once you get started on that, let's jump back into the presentation. There's a few things to consider. Just for a moment, there we go. Okay, so the first step, selecting the photos. My hot tip on this is take your time. You don't have to rush it. Good things take time. And the interesting thing I find, having spoken to so many photo book creators, is that it's better that the longer the space is between when you take the photographs and when you go to review and edit and to select them for a book or an exhibition for that matter, the longer the time, the better, because you have less emotional attachment to the images. And maybe a good example is when we see photo books by photojournalists who often take the photograph and then hand their photographs to an editor who will go through and do the selecting for them. When the photojournalist goes to create their own book, we often find the images are amazing, but generally they've got too many photographs and the design is not great. And that's because their skill is taking the photograph and composing within the frame of a photograph, but their skill is not selecting the photos or culling them and choosing the best ones, because that's usually done by their editor. And then they're not that great of presenting them or laying them out across a page, because that's not the process they're used to. So what I'm trying to say is that take your time and even have somebody else assist with the process. A fresh set of eyes can always help, and especially when it comes to being objective. And in this image here, you can see that they've actually printed them out. I don't know if it's like on a home printer or they might have gone to, the photo lab, but sometimes it can help when you're trying to select photos for a book rather than just viewing them on the screen, because you can only see a limited amount at the same time, to actually print them out, put them on the floor, pin them on the wall. It depends how serious you take or how much, effort you want to put into the creation process, how much you enjoy it. You don't have to spend a lot of time, but if you've got a project you've been working on for a few months or even a few years, that might be a helpful way to approach the selection of the images. And when you do select the photos, think about the fact that you don't just have to select the very best photos. Now, let's say in a travel photo book, for instance, which is what I think all of us might be working on at some stage, yes, it's fair to choose the best because you've probably taken hundreds, if not thousands, on a trip. And my suggestion is to cull every day, to look at your photos every day so that it doesn't become overwhelming at the end of the trip or when you come home. But in that case, just choose the best ones. Don't choose repeats, just choose the best, make sure it's in focus, don't have duplicates. But let's say your book is a little bit different. If you're presenting like in the case of the image on the screen here, the creator Anu had spent a long time taking, she was a documentary photographer who was capturing images on the streets in India, different places, different times, different kinds of subjects. You can be a lot more selective and creative, and you can mix it up a little bit. And this is where the next part of the process is very important in the pairing and sequencing. So just like I think of a photo book as being similar to a movie on paper. And in a film, you have different, you don't always have to have the hero shots. Like in your book, you don't just have to have the hero shots. You need a little bit of contrast. You need an ebb and a flow. You need some really, some hero shots that are intense or high impact. And then you need some that are more like punctuation, quieter, smaller, maybe images on the page. So you need to build tension like that. Like in a film or in a novel. So when you're choosing your images, just keep that in mind. And now we're looking at the screen here, talking about pairing and sequencing your images. What you choose to place together on the page or across a few pages can have such a different impact depending on what you're pairing it with and in what sequence they occur. There's a great American photojournalist who I'll paraphrase now. He says that the aim of when you pair your images together or choose what will appear on opposite pages or multiple images on the same page, that the sum should equal more than the individual parts, and the pairing should have meaning, give more meaning or enhance the story behind the individual photos. And the sequence which you put them in then should also engage the reader and make you keep wanting to turn the page. So when you're thinking of how to pair the images, there's some different ways you might go about that. It's totally based on what the purpose of your book is. So it comes back to purpose, and that can help define how you're going to sequence it. An obvious way for sequencing your book, a holiday book, is in chronological order. No surprises there. But let's say you have a bunch of, you love landscape photography or you love portraiture, then you could choose to sequence your book by subject or theme. Some more creative ways of going about it are by looking for similar lines, patterns, and movement within the images. And that can be really, really effective. And I'll show you some examples in just a moment. You might choose, rather than similar lines and patterns, you might choose to use contrasting textures, lines, patterns, or movement. You might choose color as a way of choosing which image will come next, alongside tones and shadow, or humor. So now I just want to show you an example of some fabulous pairing of images to get you inspired. These images are from a blog that became a photo book called 52 Suburbs. And I just love the way that Louise used shapes, the circular image in this case. In this case, the colours and the lines and the decorative features to bring these two images together, or when she chose to pair these two images. This one, for instance, I mean, if you were looking at each of these images individually, I don't think they would have the humour, or maybe not even the interest that they have once they're paired together. And I don't know about you, but that made me laugh. This just has so much impact. I mean, each of the individual images are stunning in their own right, but, you know, this says so much more about culture, community, beyond just the, the beautiful difference in the blacks and the whites. It just, the combination of the two seems more interesting and has more impact than the individual images. Even the fact that she faced, she made the portraits facing together. I mean, they're all the different kinds of things you need to consider when laying out your book. And another one, the image on the left there, I don't know, on its own, I'd be thinking, I don't know if that's worthy of making the photo book, but when it is paired with the henna and the pattern on the right, I think it works beautifully. It contrasts, it's visually interesting. Okay, so the other considerations, and of which there are many, I've taken these from a bit of design theory and also from reading up on different photo book design styles that have occurred in the last, say, 50 years. So in terms of style, there's different approaches you can take. If you are, say, designing a portfolio, I imagine that you're going to have a very clean, minimalist style. Most portfolios, or more like exhibition catalogues, you often see it has a blank page on the left and the hero shot or the image is on the right, and it fills the page or almost fills the page. That's a fairly common style for a catalogue or a portfolio or a monograph, a printed monograph. And to me, that's classic and timeless. And if you go into a bookstore, you'll see a lot of books formatted in that way. The other option is, and that's considered what they call the American photo book style. The other option, or what we have seen more of in the last few years, is what we call the Dutch photo book design style. And that's where they become a little bit more playful with the placement of the images on the page. So they might end up putting, rather than centering an image on the page, they might push it up hard into the corner of the top right of the page. And then on the left-hand side, you might have a larger image on the left. I do have a video that I can show you of this, but I don't think it's necessary right now. But basically, you can also be quite playful with the placement of the images. You can have more on the page, and you'll see a few more examples shortly of that. Colour scheme, very important. If you go to the bookstore and have a look in the photo book section, it's interesting to see what features most commonly in the books. And a consistent colour scheme, very plain, not too busy, can make a big difference. And, choosing the appropriate coloured text for the background, what they say, you need if you are going to add text into your photo book, make sure that the colour of the text is in, high contrast to the background colour so that it can be legible. And I'm going to talk through this, and then I'll show you some examples that make it really clear in just a moment. Okay, consistency. And with consistency, I mean consistency in whether it's the font style you use, whether it's if you use a frame in your book, be consistent with it. Don't have too many variables. Also keep the alignment on the page consistent. I think that's one of the biggest issues that I see in books that come through our production facility, is that often people don't leave enough space around the edge, and if they are centering them on the page, they don't give the image room to breathe on the page. And where it aligns at the top and the bottom, or the left and right side on each page, varies all the time, and it just looks a little haphazard. If you would like it to look more professional, if that's the aim of your book and your book design, then just be consistent with the alignment. And we have rulers in the software that make that easy for you. Text. Consistency, alignment. Okay, alignment, I've talked about. Text. All right, so I'm a big advocate for adding text to photo books. You do not have to. I'm just giving you my opinion here. But having sat in on all of those photo book judging sessions over the years, I see a lot of books that I have no idea who the photographer is, and I have no idea what the, I have no background knowledge of the book or the images or what they're trying to say in their book. So having a bit of text, even if it's just at the front of the book or captions underneath, just help the reader who doesn't know as much about the book as you do to just orient themselves and be prepared for what they're about to see. And in that way, I think it's a more enjoyable read. But when you are integrating or adding text in, be considerate about, the font style that you choose. If you've got the classic, if you want a classic traditional look, then working with a serifed font, which has the caps and the hats, I think we call them, something like that. That is, more of a classic look. Contemporary look, more contemporary design can have sans serif font. But just, I'll show you an example of that when we get into the software in a moment anyway, but just be considerate of the size. I remember seeing a book come into one of the award judging sessions, and I thought, wow, that font is particularly large and almost overwhelming. But when I realized that the topic of the book was portraits of people in an old, in a retirement village, I thought, well, that makes complete sense, because the readers of the book are going to be older, and the larger the font size, the better they can see. So it was very specific to that book. So once again, consider the purpose of your book, and that will help you in your design process as well. Okay, the format of your book. Now that's a big one. Only moments ago, I showed you, this book, The 365 Days of the Year. It was totally appropriate to be produced in a square size, because at that stage when she did it, Instagram only used square imagery. Let's say if you're a landscape photographer, I think it's fair to say that you're going to have the majority of your images will be in the landscape orientation or ratio. So therefore a landscape will suit. Portrait photography, ironically, good in portrait format. But keep those considerations in mind. Paper, we have 14 different paper stocks available for you to use. And people often ask me, which paper stock do you think? And I always say, well, what's your book about? What's the purpose of your book? If the purpose of your book is, if it's a portfolio and you take really, colourful images and you like really punchy colours, then you might prefer the luster stock or even the gloss stock, because that will add to the high impact of your images. In the book, this book that I showed you, the war history one, they actually chose what we call eggshell stock, and it has a beautiful texture to it, but it also has an off-white tinge to it, which kind of works with that, historical vintage element associated with the book. Likewise, it could work for baby books or weddings. If you want a really contemporary clean look, then our satin stock is suitable. So you can see all the details. Actually, Dirk, you have a welcome pack that has all our different paper stocks in it. If anybody is ever interested in seeing what the different paper stocks are, you can ask Dirk. But we also have descriptions on the website that can help you make that decision. I suppose what I'm just trying to say is that if you really like to have meaning at every layer of your book, not just within the photos, but within the design style and the materials that you choose, then just be thoughtful about it as you make your decisions. Cover materials. So we have 40 different cover materials, as well as printed covers. Now, I don't think it'll be any surprise for you that the most popular cover material is a printed cover, because most people making a photo book are very proud of their photos and would like you to see that as soon as you pick up their book. But what's interesting with, say, more of the work that you might buy in a art bookstore or a traditional bookstore, a lot of photo books these days, surprise, surprise, don't have a photo on the cover. They're kind of they're going for a more artistic approach or a unique approach where they might use a material with a custom emboss on the front cover. So just keep that in mind. And I will show you a few more images of our formats and products a little later in the presentation. Finally, graphics. As I mentioned before, photo books don't just have to have photos in them. Text, I think, is very helpful for context, as I mentioned, but you can also add graphics in there if they assist. In the case of that memoir, then yes, the military certificates and documentation helped. They took photographs of the medals and what have you. But let's say you've done a trip to Antarctica, you might want to include a map of where you traveled there. You might want to include the itinerary, those kinds of things. Just keep them in mind, because I think they can help enhance the story and help you tell the full story. And I think that is the beauty of a photo book, say by comparison to an exhibition, both of which are equally valid and excellent photo presentation formats. But what a book allows you to do is to add a little more data and information and graphics in there to enhance the story. Okay, does anyone have any questions at this point? All good?
Sure.
Good, I'm just gonna have a sip. I wanted to take the opportunity to put this photograph in because this is the winner of the Australian Photographic Society competition, the Australian Photographic Society's photo book competition, which they've been hosting for 5 years now. This is Leslie Bretherton, who won the portfolio category only a week or two ago. And I just wanted to point out that she had done a trip to Hokkaido and had a beautiful series of images, very minimalist images of the snow and the trees and the landscape. And I thought it was incredibly appropriate that she complemented those with a haiku. So each page is the same in this book, a haiku on the left with a lot of space around it, and then the image on the right. So the design of the book is very minimalist. The text is very minimalist in its size, but it's also very appropriate to the Japanese culture and landscape. So I thought it had meaning at every level, and it was just possibly a more interesting or just a different way to present what could have been just holiday photos.
Just a quick question, if I may interrupt.
Yeah, go for it.
With, say, how you were talking about with the book about the elderly folks' home, how the text was larger.
Yeah.
Is there a point where text is a bit too much, like, say, your Humans of New York type book, where it has more of your paragraphs or half the page or longer?
Yeah, look, your point was, can text get too much? I think there are a few answers to that, and it's an excellent point. I think if you're creating a photo book, that the photos should still be the hero of the book. It totally depends on the purpose of the book, but what some people do is they actually overwhelm the images sometimes with too much text, or text that's too big, or text that is superimposed over the top of the image, and you're kind of losing the image. So just be thoughtful about that. As to the length of text or the amount of text you put in, I think that's totally dependent on what the purpose of the book is. In the case of that, the memoir, for instance, there's a combination of, sorry, I didn't really realise there, you know, introductory text and graphs, but then just captions on this side. You know, there's a few paragraphs throughout. Let me show you another one. But what I think, and it actually leads me on to my next screen if I'm correct. We'll come back to that. Where did I put it? I should have had one more note in here, and I bet you the slide's going to come up in a few slides time, but if you are going to include text in a photo book, what I see most often and what I think works really well is like a foreword in the book. And please, when you do use the word foreword in the book, spell it with an FOREWORD, not forward like the forward and rewind that I so often see. You know, just a little bit of an introduction that tells the reader why you created the book, what drove you to creating the book and what the process was. I think that's, I mean, I love to learn that about a book when I read it. And I'll show you another example in a moment, but that's what Rob has done with his. He's included an introduction. You might call it a foreword, it doesn't matter. But over here on this page, this is what we call the colophon. And to me, if you want to make your book look professional, even if it's just for you, you can just put a few details that would normally appear in a colophon at the start. So officially, you know, a colophon in a published book tells you what date it was published, or in your case, what day you printed it, who designed it, who you are as the photographer. You know, in a trade publication, it will tell you who the printer was, and possibly that's where you might find the ISBN number. But I think a bio, your own bio, if it's a portfolio, I think a biography, a very short biography is a great inclusion as well. I just want to see what other text Rob has started his book with. He's told you a bit about the landscape that we're about to see. But I think maybe at the end, and I'll show you one more. Okay, he's got a dedication in it as well. He has got his bio, but he put it at the end about the author and included his own photo. So there's a few things, but the other good example is the Cat-Eye Tanda book by the Light Collective. So they, in this case, they also included a dust jacket on their book, which you can have, and they just give you a short introduction to what the book is about on the inside of that dust jacket. They have their title page. Might seem obvious, but a lot of people don't. They have a foreword, which tells you how the project came into being and who was involved. And interestingly, they got Peter Eastway to write it. So, you know, depending what the purpose of your book is, you know, you might choose the right people to write. It can be just yours. They also give an introduction, and I believe they give a map on the next page. Yeah, so they give you a map of Cat-Eye Tanda and a few details. But Fraser, does that answer your question, or were you wanting to know more about, say, how our software manages the text?
No, that was good. I'm assuming the how software manages will be in the software part of the...
Yeah, I'll do a little bit, and I'll explain a little bit more about text, how we work with text then too.
Can I ask a question about going back to the beginning when you were saying selecting the photos?
Yeah.
Is it better to print the ones you're going to use and select them, or can you do it all on screen?
Oh, look, you can do it however you want. If you're comfortable with doing it on screen, then do it on screen. I think a lot of people, okay, so when I speak to a lot of people who study how to make a photo book at, you know, in their photographic studies, and their lecturers will often say it's better to print your photos out so you can see them all at once, and you can also play physically play with the sequencing of the images and put them close together and then move them apart and then change the sequence physically. It just depends on how you'd like to, if you like looking at things on screen. I kind of get a little sick of looking at things on screen after a while, and I can't get a clear picture of the overview. And I find it handy to, whether it's written documents or images, I quite like to print them, but it's totally subjective.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? It's Pam here.
Hey, Pam.
Where you've got photos crossing over more than one page, spread over 2 pages, what design considerations do you think one should keep in mind when you're doing that?
First of all, Pam, that can be very controversial if you're speaking to an old school photo book creator or designer. I do find that it's a generational thing. Like in the past, if you had a trade published photo book, they would not have images cross over the gutter. And if they did, it would be in a section sewn book where it's on the middle page. So it's, got the least interference from the curvature in the spine. If you are asked, my personal opinion is, I don't think it matters. If it works in the context of your book and your book design, then I think that's fine. If you want an example, Peter Eastway, his magnificent book Middlehurst that we created for him, and we won we got the #1 print award in the world last year or the year before, I think, for that book. He had almost, majority of the pages in that book, or the majority of the spreads in that book, had an image span over 2 pages. So I think it's subjective. If, however, you're asking me how that works and what considerations need to be made when you're creating your book in our software, that's a different question. And basically you don't have to worry about it, because we have a tool, and I'll show you that in the software demo, the span tool, which will automatically span the image across the page evenly, across the 2 pages. And our software has the smarts to understand when we're printing it based on whatever size of book you chose and what paper stock you chose, and therefore what the binding style is, then our software automatically calculates what it needs. But I have my tech support from the audience here has something he'd like to add to that.
No, just keep any vital content, text and faces away.
Okay, so he's made the perfect point, which is whatever you do, keep any vitally important elements of an image, whether it's text, faces, eyes, a particular detail, keep them away from the gutter or the centerfold, because yes, especially if you choose our side sewn option, you can lose some of the image into the page. And I'll just show you that now. I've got a graphic here to show you. I'm going to skip ahead just to show you. So see here, in this is what we call side sewn versus this one, which we call section sewn. So side sewn is where we've just taken that whole stack of pages, and then we just we take the pages and then we literally just stitch down the side, and that's where you end up getting the fold in the page, because they're coming out from the middle like that. That was a really bad demonstration on my part, but we won't talk about it. But as you can see, you do lose a little into the gutter, and the thicker the book, the more pages you have in the book, the more you will lose. If, however, you choose section sewing, which is where every 8 pages are folded in half, folded, and then each of those sections are sewn together, that's what we call section sewing. So there is more opportunity for the pages to sit flat. Does that answer your question, Pam?
Yes, that's great. Thanks, Libby.
No props. And now I'll just jump back here. Okay, so I'm actually going to this book here is an example that I want to show you in a PDF and a video in just a moment, because it's a great example of how using just a few of those design tips that I've mentioned can turn a good photo book design into a great photo book design. And I'm actually going to show you a before and after with Barbara's book. But before I do, this is my summary of my hot tips. Number one, easily, is less is always more. And by that, I mean even less in the number of photos that you choose, because you see the best images when you choose less. And, you know, it's harder to keep the reader engaged over more pages. It can be done if they're great images, but don't overdo it. Don't have duplicates, repeats. Even in things like wedding albums, I'm always fascinated by, you know, you see the same people in every shot. I know you've got to include everybody, but you don't need the same pose a few different times, like maybe with a slight different shadow. So just be thoughtful, and less is more. Include only the best, or I should have a caveat here, which is all the most appropriate photos. So once again, it comes back to what the purpose of your book is. You might have loved a particular photo that you shot, but when you put it into the sequence with all the others, somebody, probably not you, might say, what's that shot doing in there? It doesn't have any meaning or relationship to the others. Sometimes it's harder for you to see that, but make sure the images are appropriate. Symmetry and white space, alignment, structure, clarity, space for the image to, you know, to be the hero, and that links into hero shots. Your best shots, yes, are the ones that you should increase in size on the page, maybe blow up and fill a full page, or even cross the gutter onto, you know, the other side of the page. But then you can also have, you know, punctuation shots. Sometimes you need a moment, just like in a movie, you want a moment of quietness, or, you know, not intensity on the screen. It's the same with a book. You just want to be quiet for a moment. So a smaller image, maybe of a texture, or something, you know, less, you know, with less clarity or detail about it, that can be like, it's like a punctuation mark in your book. Text for context, I won't bang on about that anymore. And then forward and colophon, that's where I put it. And yes, we've already seen what that looks like. All of those are subjective, but less is more, symmetry and white space will always work. So now, before we make the book, I'd just like to jump across to this video, to this file first of all. So what I have here is a book called Chernobyl. And I just showed you the cover of this in the presentation, but this book was created by a woman called Barbara Brown, who, funnily enough, went to Chernobyl and took some amazing photographs, and she laid out her own photo book, which I'll flick through in just a moment. She did what I think is an okay job, but then she also knew a book designer or a graphic designer who was very familiar with publications and layouts, and the difference that the graphic designer or the publication designer could create with the same images and text was, I think, quite phenomenal. So I'll just flick through this quickly. First of all, note the typo here on the cover. Please check your text before you print your book. Our software doesn't have spell check in it, so do your spell checking when you type it up in another program. But yeah, if you were to judge a book by its cover, I'd kind of mark that one down. Here we go. So, you know, the text, she's used a decorative font for the title, and then a cursive font, and then a sans serif font. Actually, this isn't very big. I'll zoom it in a bit so you can see it. Cursive, then a sans serif font, different widths in the text on the page. I don't have a problem with that. Consistency in a title at the top of the page, caption here, book numbering in the corner. Personally, I think, you know, a little bit more space between the bottom of this paragraph and the page edge would have been nice.
Hey, Libby,
Libby,
Can't actually see the book. We can just
Oh!
presentation.
You must be thinking, what is she doing? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll do that again. So I'll go in and now choose. Can you see that?
We can see that. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry guys, I'll start that again then. So here, echoes of the past with the typo, the cursive font, the various widths in the text. I like the fact that there's a consistent heading at the top of the page and it's in the same spot each page. Here, I would have given a little bit more space between the bottom of the paragraph and the edge of the page. Maybe you could have got a little bit more, so the alignment, maybe you could have aligned the top of this image with the top of that one or the bottoms, what have you. This time she's got the text on the left, not underneath. That's just an error in her design, I feel. She probably didn't know. This image here is kind of, it's hanging off to the right or hugging the right. Not sure if it's a mistake or it's supposed to fill from the left to the right of the page. Anyway, these are just a few things to consider. This is a really nice page where, top to bottom, I would have kept the heading off the top there for, to keep consistency. Same height and at the bottom and the top would have been more palatable, shall we say. Okay, so they're stunning images. There's no doubt that the images are stunning, but I think that the text and layout could be improved. And this is what Kathy, who interestingly is Kathy Eastway, Peter Eastway's wife, is the book designer. This is what Kathy did with it. And I'd be fascinated to hear what you think. So I'm just going to play it here. I'll go into full screen mode. Are you seeing that video?
Not yet, no.
All right, let me go in. I will do the old share screen. You're seeing that now?
Yeah, that's good now.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I'm just going to play it. It's got a little bit of music behind it. So bear in mind, this is all the same text and images, but just designed differently. So the alignment at the top and the bottom is more consistent. The margins on the left and the right of the pages are more consistent. She still has the title at the top in the same spot. 2 columns for the text, which is actually easier to read, as you'll notice when, whenever you've read a newspaper. The quote is in a different font and size, but there's also a very consistent colour theme throughout that book based on the kind of the painted images. All right. So, hold on, I'm still playing it. So which did you guys prefer?
Yeah, definitely the second.
Yeah, to me that blew my mind when I saw it. I thought I really understood the difference between just implementing a few simple design features, like literally a different font, 2 columns, consistency and alignment at the bottom and the top of the page and on the side of the pages, and the coloured backgrounds, like the blue and that kind of beigey colour that she pulled out of some of the images, and that was like had a similar tone. That tone was in many of the photographs, and I thought that just brought it all together. The other thing was you don't want too much repetition in a book. Like, you don't want every page to be the same layout. There's nothing wrong with it, mind you, but just a little bit of variety is good. But a repeat in, like, you might have 8 different double page spread layouts that you have that you can repeat throughout the book, because you want a bit of variability, but you also want you want a consistency at the same time. You just got to get that right balance. And I think that book did a really nice job. So let's go and have a look at the software now. So let's hope I do this share screen correctly again. So I'm going to go and share screen and go to the software. Oh, cancel. Okay, I'm going to go to start. No, I don't want that. So basically, I just want to confirm for you guys who maybe aren't members of Momento yet that we have two different services. We have Momento, which is our consumer service that mums and dads, anyone can use to make baby books, holiday books, wedding books, whatever you would like. Then we also have Momento Pro, the Momento Pro service, which was initially established for professional photographers and photo artists. But over the years, we have opened up this service to people like you who are enthusiasts and members of camera clubs or photography groups that we approve. So you can become a member of Momento Pro, and this is the software that you would use. There is very little difference between the two software packages that we have. It's all based on the same functionality. We just happen to have a few more product options available to you, because in the Pro service, we have more sizes, more papers, and more binding options. So this is the Momento photo book software. Funnily enough, I'm going to go in here and make a photo book. The albums are more often used by our wedding and portrait photographers. As you can see down there, you can also create stationery with our software and with our service. So photo books, these are a variety of binding types that we have available. We already looked at the side sewn and section sewn options before. The lay flat paper I showed you earlier has that flexible hinge, and the fine art books are printed on our inkjet printers and hand sewn, and they have a different binding style as well. I'm just going to choose our side sewn, which is the most popular option. I just want to start by showing you how the software can lay out a book for you in a matter of minutes. I'm going to use my travel photos from Turkey that were shot a few years ago. Sadly, I haven't got them all into a printed book yet, but I would like to choose a landscape format for my book because that suits the majority of the images that I shot, the ratio of the images. And I'm also going to choose regular size, which is equivalent to an A4 landscape. If you wanted, we also do the A5 size and the A3 size that we call small and grand. Just note that if you ever consider creating a grand book, the larger size, make sure you create it at grand size, because we can always downsize the print, but we can't upsize the print if you choose small or regular and then want to print it as grand. So regular, oops, I've just been going too crazy there. So there are various ways you can use our software to lay out a book. You can use the software and it'll do it totally automated for you. You can go fully manual, or you can choose a combination of both. To start with, I'm going to show you how, if we already have a themed QuickBook that's created, that has some very simple designs in it, all you have to do is go and find the folder of your photos. So I'll just show you that you just navigate to your photos. Here's mine from Turkey from 2013. I've labeled try and keep my photos labeled quite clearly. I'm going to choose that folder. So apparently I've got 64 photos, which it will now lay out across 53 pages. You have a few different options you can choose here. Because it's a travel book, it makes the most sense that I sort the photos by date. In this case, you can choose file name, the choice is yours. The others, you can choose to use those if you want, but because you guys, I imagine, are more used to post-producing your images, I suggest you don't choose auto enhance. So now we're going to create the layouts there. So it's, as we saw there, it's now going to, lay out my 64 photos across those 53 pages into just some very simple symmetrical page designs. And I'm going to, so now we're into what we call the layout mode in the software. But what I'm going to do is just go to immediately to preview, which kind of removes all of the software interface. And you can just step through the, sorry, now I've hidden my tools here. You can just see what the basic design is that it created in less than a minute. So that's, you know, a neat, tidy, simple design there. And, you know, that might be suitable for some, but if you want to be more creative and have a go, now I'm going to show you how you can do that. So let me, okay. All right. So now I'm going to go back to start the book again. I'm not going to bother about saving that. Once again, I'm going into photo books, choosing side zone, landscape, and regular. But this time I'm going to go with the manual option. And now we are in the software, the main part of the software, the layout interface. This is where the Zoom interface really interferes with the software. Just a moment, trying to get it out of the way. All right, so I'm going to start by just showing you the basic features of the interface, so you know where everything happens. So up the top here, we have the sequence or the order that you would create your book in. We were already in start menu. Don't worry about sort menu for now. You will rarely use it. It's about to get a whole reworking anyway. Layout, as I said, this is where we are now. This is where everything, this is where the magic happens. And we add the images, the text, and the graphics. Preview we were in before, and then finish. On the left-hand side is where we have all of the content that you can use in your project. They can be photos, as you can see here, and you can change the folder that you're using by, you know, literally just going into your, let's see what we've got here. You can just navigate to different images, different folders as you would. Let's go back to our turkey images. So the folders, you can sort them by date or by name, whichever you would like. If you want to see more detail in any image on the left here, you can just double click it to bring it up. So what you're seeing is a lot of functionality you would see in other software. So we've got our photos. We also have a library of backgrounds, colors, and textures that you can add, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. We have a series of different frames. I don't imagine that you guys would need to use a huge variety of frames. My personal favorite is the keyline frame, and I'll show you how to use that later. But you can add more via our updater panel on the right, which I'll demonstrate in a moment. That's where you'll also find a host of different embellishments, but I don't feel you'll have a great need for those, so we won't dwell on that. And layouts, and we'll come to layouts in a moment. So back here again, on the left-hand side is where all your content is. Across the top is where you navigate through the different parts of the software. You also can navigate through the different pages using the arrows here. Very hard to see the change without any images on the page. But we also have the down the bottom, we have the thumbnails that can move you through the software. This is also where you can add, move, and remove pages. Now, on the right-hand side, on our way over, we have the add text tool, which we'll use very shortly. And then, sorry, this is really not working for me. Okay. And then over on the right, sorry, we have our tools menu that will be highlighted in a moment. We're going to use that quite a bit in a moment. The updater panel, that's where I was suggesting you can go and find more frames, backgrounds, and other kinds of content if you want, you know, templates. There's a whole host you can find there, but I'll let you investigate that at your leisure. Upload is where you can upload your finished file. inspiration is where we put details about, you know, any how-to videos, or maybe we have a special offer or something like that. You can find them there. And then this is Jeff, or this is where the geeks like to hang out. And that's where you can get see shortcuts for all of the different tools as well. So now I've shown you where all the parts of the interface are. Let's just run through. I just wanted to show you how to add images, how to add text, and then how we can do a bit of manual alignment as well. So I'm going to jump back over here to this side of the page. All right. So with our book, I think of a book like a paper movie, as I mentioned before. And to me, your cover and your title page really need to include an iconic image, or an image that beautifully represents what the book is about and what you're going to find in there. In the case of this holiday book, I've decided I'm going to choose this image of the tiles. So when I was traveling throughout Turkey, I saw tiles everywhere, and I went to a lot of effort to capture photographs of the tiles, because I wanted to use them in my photo book as background images, and you know, to divide up the different chapters of the book. I'd thought about it before I went on holiday, and that was my focus. So, and I often take a lot of photos of textures or close-ups of different elements and items to use as what I call the punctuation shots throughout a book. Anyway, in this case, for my title page, I'm choosing the tiles. I want to show you some basic tools. So if you drag the green arrows, you can scale your photo, shrink and enlarge the image, just like you can with many other software packages. If you drag the red marks, you're changing the cropping position. And if you want, you can move what is appearing in that cropped area as well by just dragging across. You can see the hand, once again, another common tool. I'm now going to remove that crop that I had by right-clicking, clear cropping, but you could also go up to the menu up the top here as well. Just like other software packages, there's shortcuts for everything, or right-click, you can do the same. So I actually want to fill the page with this image too. So you can center it by coming over here to the tools menu by clicking on this align to page option, or just to show a few others, you know, you can just horizontally center, or in the same case, you can vertically center. But in my case, I would like to fill the page. So it's, align to the center of the page, but I would also like to fill the page. So I'm going to use this option down here to fill the page. Now I would like to add some text, because I really feel that the title page deserves some title text. So I'm coming up to the add text tool there, clicking on the page where I want the text to appear, brings up the window. And I like there to be meaning at every level of my book. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to call the book Turkish Delight. And I'm going to choose an appropriate font. Now, we have a series of fonts in the software that you can use, and it also looks into your onto your hard disk to see what you've got available. But I went and specifically found a font that I thought would work well with this book and kind of reflect this kind of the text and the script that I saw there. So funnily enough, it was called Falafel. Falafel regular font, and you can see there's a whole heap of fonts. You can also choose the size and the color. I'm going to go in here and choose, I'm going to select Bosphorus green, or Bosphorus blue green, because that was the water that I was looking at when I was there. And I think that it might need to be around 24 or 36 font size. We'll see how that goes. So I've made those selections. You can also go in and center, left or right align. I'm going to choose centered, and there we go. Now, I think it's very obvious, first of all, that I haven't chosen the right size. So I'll go in and change that again and make it a bit bigger. So we're going to go 72. But more importantly, you can't see the damn text. No problems. I'm going to go now and go to the background, and I'm going to reduce the opacity of the image so that it now becomes legible. And that's why I took a lot of those photographs of the tiles, because I knew that I could make them a feature but also reduce the opacity. Now, just like you can center an image, you can also center the text. So there we have it. And one very important thing I forgot to do was to add the date in, text for context. So there we go. Now, if I wanted to, I could stretch that out and have that spread across 2 lines, and that's how I prefer it. So I'm just going to center the text again. And while we're here, you can also see the ruler that's around the top there. That can help us with alignment as well. Does anybody have any questions about the text?
No.
All good?
Oh, making sense from here.
Cool. So the next thing is, on the first double page spread, I want to create a bit of impact. Once again, like a movie, you know, get it out there, you know, set the scene in a really, you know, high impact way. So I'm going to choose an image that I think was very representative of Turkey, and I am going to choose this one, the Blue Mosque. But this time I want to span the 2 pages like we were talking about before, Pam. So you literally just have to select the image and then come over here to the position area in the tools panel, and that will automatically align it across the 2 pages. But I want to also fill the page from, you know, top to bottom, left to right. That's okay, but I'm not happy with the alignment on the page. I want the image to move up a little bit, so you can literally just come in and drag it into position. You'll see there that when I dragged it, it introduced this red icon. That's a warning icon that tells me that I've moved it either too far into the page, so it doesn't know if I'm wanting it to bleed over the edge of the page, or I've dragged it off the page too far. So you can just realign that, or just set the fill page setting again, and it will automatically adjust that for you. Now I want to just quickly show you a few more things. I just want to show you how you can use the templates to automatically align images on the page. So I'm going to drag onto the right page 3 images that I think would work well in a sequence. We're going to come here. So this was when we were inside the Hagia Sophia. 1, 2, and 3 images. Now we have a bit of an issue in that this image is a different ratio to all the others, but that's no problem because we can use the relative size tool by selecting all of the images that we want to align, resize to the same dimensions or ratio, and you can either right click or you can come up here to the layout menu, and I'm going to size to the narrowest image, and then we have them all at the same width. But I meant to do size to the largest, which would do both dimensions, height and width. So now we have the right size, but they're not very well aligned. So we can do a few things. We can right click and go to the relative align menu. So I'm going to relative align to the top of each of them, and now they're all in the same alignment, and we can drag that down the page. And so that's one way of doing it. Or to make life easier, you could have dragged those 3 images on the page and then come over here to the layout menu, and then you can see an endless array of different formats or layouts that you could choose, and it would just automatically take on that alignment. So that's what I could have done. I could have chosen this one here. Oh, it's having a little freak out because I think sometimes it doesn't like Zoom. Let's see if that works. Now what we're going to do, we are going to drop those images on here and do that again. 1, 2, and 3. And go to the layout menu and choose it. There we go. So there we have our 3 images. Now, I don't mind that layout. The layout looks good, but I actually wanted, say, this image in the middle rather than on the left, and that's easy. You can just drag and drop and it will replace the image. Is there any other functionality that anyone would particularly like to see?
With Momento, can it work with Lightroom as well? Can you import from one to the other, or is it?
I knew there'd be somebody who asked that, and that's why I prepared for Jeff to come and just say a few words about how you can work with Lightroom and Momento Pro. So he'll do that very, very shortly. Just before I hand over to him, though, were there any other questions about the software?
Can you use an automatic adjustment on just one photo?
And when you say an adjustment, do you mean like we have the ability, say, if you wanted to, you can come over here. I've chosen one image, and yes, you can come and change you can turn it into a black and white, sepia toned, duotone, monotone or tint, that kind of thing, or you can change the saturation. But are you talking more about a format change?
No, in the lighting and so forth. If you saw an image there, just one image that you wanted to adjust, can you?
Yes, you can. And you can do that in Lightroom or Photoshop, as long as once you've done the adjustment that you save it into the same folder with the same name that it had before so that it can update.
Right.
Did that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. And sometimes what happens, just be careful when you have started your book design to not move your files around, because if you move your files around, the software will detect the image as missing, and that's no drama, but you will just have to manually, it will bring up a screen, it'll bring up a warning that says, I can't find this image, and you'll just have to navigate to that image again so it relinks it.
Right.
But yeah, easily fixed. So
I don't know if you're going to cover this. Sorry, Libby. What sort of colour space would you recommend that people put their images in, like Adobe RGB or sRGB? Or?
Totally Adobe RGB, but you know what? I'm going to let the colour guru, Jeff, join us and talk about the colour, Lightroom, and damn it, what was that other topic I said? Doesn't matter. Jeff can come and join us. This is my partner at work and play, Jeff, and he's the brains behind the software.
Hi there.
G'day.
Hello.
Hello. So I've been listening in, so I've heard all of Lib's said so far. I guess the software, our software, isn't the only way you can design your files. It's certainly an easy way to do it, and we have intentionally made it simpler than InDesign, not as powerful in the editing as Photoshop. There's really good tools out there to do a lot of the things. So we didn't try and recreate the wheel. If you want more power than what our software can provide, then certainly InDesign. We have a plugin for InDesign, which you can download from the services design tools part of our software, of our website. InDesign is a big beast, so you can actually end up spending more time learning InDesign than actually designing your book. So that one's for the brave, unless you've already got the skills. Also, there is a book module in Lightroom, but we're not supporting it, and the reason is that Adobe don't support any page formats other than the US page shapes for the blurb service. So, the only shape in there that would work with us is the square one, and the rest of them are very blurb-like. So we don't actually directly support the book module. But when it comes to working with Lightroom, as Lib alluded to before, you know, our program works quite happily side by side with Lightroom. You can keep Lightroom running and our software running. You can do your edits, and each time you've done some edits, you can re-export them, as Lib said, to the same folder and file name, and our software will just see that they've changed and pick up the edits. There's no, you know, you don't have to re-drag them into your layout or anything. In terms of the color space, our software and all of our production is fully color managed, ICC based. So you can shoot and edit in whatever you like, but our native space is Adobe RGB, so, and there are benefits to working in Adobe RGB. But if you shoot sRGB and edit sRGB, then our software will detect that and correctly export to Adobe RGB, and all our files are ripped and printed from Adobe RGB. I don't recommend using ProPhoto RGB. It's not a good color space to output to print from. The color gamut is so vast that the distinct points in the ICC color profile are too far apart, and you can end up introducing banding in for example, subtle sky tones, or you know, any subtle gradients. You might see some stepping in the color. So certainly I would recommend, if you do use ProPhoto, export to ProPhoto for other purposes, but for your book prints and potentially your other prints, export to Adobe RGB. And that will give you the least conversions along the way. If you output straight from your RAW to Adobe RGB, bring it into our software as Adobe RGB, our software will output it Adobe RGB, and then when it goes to press at our factory, it will go from Adobe RGB to the CMYK that is relevant to the page stock you've chosen. So there are ICC profiles available on our website that you can use for soft proofing. The soft proofing is not supported by Lightroom because Lightroom, for whatever reason, doesn't support CMYK soft proof profiles. So if you want to do your soft proofing, you have to use Photoshop, and those profiles will give you a pretty good indication of the impact of the stock you've chosen on your photos. Never edit with, you know, never do all your edits with your soft proofing turned on. Do your edits and then just switch to the soft proof and back just to get a feel for it. Never convert to the soft proof profiles, because that will, it'll do funny things to your images. Should be avoided. So that they're there for people who want to just get a flavor for each of the papers. But I have to say, almost exclusively, once our customers have done a few projects with us, they usually don't need those profiles anymore. They get confident with the result they see in their first printed book, and that's enough to, you know, not need the soft proof profiling. They are only ever a guide anyway. File formats that we support: JPEG, TIFF, and PNG. If you wanted to do something with some deep etching, you can use PNG with transparency. So we'll support the alpha channel in the PNG. Our software doesn't support RAW. You have to do all your RAW in Lightroom or Capture One or whatever your preferred environment is. Any questions on the more techie stuff?
It sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah.
That makes sense. Good, good.
Thank you, Jeff.
That is.
You are dismissed.
Thank you.
And look, I think I've covered everything, or you know, the basics in the software, and so I'm going to stop sharing that and jump back. There's like 1 or 2 screens I have left, because I realize that I'm right on time now. So let me just jump back into the PowerPoint. Less is more. Okay. My top photo. Let's make a book. Once you've made your book, you'll find it available in what we call your projects list on the website, where you can go and order it. You can also find a link to a digital version of it if you ever want to post it on your social feed or on your website. What else have we got? Are you seeing that now? Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. This is just a quick summary of the different formats, most of which I've shown you tonight now. But, you know, we have 2 print options, which are our Indigo digital offset printing option, which is the international benchmark for print-on-demand photo books. But we, unlike most other photo book providers, also offer an inkjet print option onto cotton rag stock, which is the ultimate. It's also a lot more expensive, but if you're looking at creating what you might call your photographic legacy, a book that you want for yourself, your lifetime's achievement of photographs and something you can hand on, you know, as a keepsake to the next generation, you might consider an inkjet book. Or if you're Ken Duncan or Peter Eastway and you're selling limited editions for a few $1,000s, you can do that as well. Please let me know if you're interested. We have hardcover and softcover books. I showed you before. Sorry, I just grabbed these few things. So we also do softcover books, like perfect bound books, if you want, and booklets that have just stitching down the saddle stitching, which is staple binding, which actually does look really nice. It looks better than it sounds. If you want something more economical, say for a self-published book run, I think it's also worth me pointing out here that we do have 2 different price lists. If you're just interested in printing a single copy of a book, that's generally what we do. So we call that print on demand, and our print on demand pricing covers quantities of 1 up to 24. If you're interested in producing a self-published book, you might be interested in quantities of, say, 25 to 250 copies. And that's what we call our volume order range. And we have a different price bracket for that. And that has, you know, heavily discounted pricing because you're ordering more. And when you're doing that, that's when the soft cover options become available. The last few things there, we have 12 sizes, as I mentioned before. They're based on A5, A4 and A3 specs in landscape and portrait orientation. And with the square, it's the short side of this is what we call the small square, and that's the short side of an A5. So that's how we get our square dimensions. 40 different cover materials, ranging from genuine leather to silk to linen to classic buckram, and some, you know, papers, metallic papers. So there's a whole range there, and you can just choose what suits the style and purpose of your book. And then if you want to add some additional embellishments, embossing, a lot of people choose, a very popular option is the linen material with an embossing, and you can do the embossed text in a large size or a small size. We've got the dust jackets, we've got boxes. So that's the whole range, but you can see all of that on the website.
As you also said, Libby, I've got that sample pack there that people can come and have a look at the swatches and whatever else, the different types of papers.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, I forgot that. And in there, it also has, on the papers, great that I'm on the papers image on my screen now too. So the 12 different paper stocks, or is it 14? I think it's 14, which Dirk has in the welcome pack. If you look on the back of the paper stock, it will tell you all of the details and, you know, whether it's, you know, what the brightness is like, you know, what the texture is like. And we also have the same images printed on the back of each of them, so you can see how it kind of varies across the different paper stocks if you're really into your paper. I just wanted to show you, sometimes people aren't aware that we also do produce things like calendars, a wall calendar, or a desk calendar, and they're very cost effective. Like if you're starting to think about meaningful Christmas gifts, might be interested in that. But we also do cards, greeting cards. So your folded greeting card, and you can design all panels of that. Ken Duncan prints his greeting cards with us, and he has put text on the back and his logo, just to give you some ideas. Another one there, you can put text on the inside if you want. They all come with a thick envelope, but we also do like promo cards as well, if that's what you're interested in. And why print with Momento? Because you get a discount. No, well, first of all, because we're the only Australian owned and made photo book manufacturer. We did get the apparently the most prestigious award in the world, not last year, the year before, for art book prints. So we can promise you world-class printing. And Jeff is a geek, and he and my other business partner, James, have put much effort into getting colour accuracy is what we're all about, basically. So we promise you good quality. And if you ever want to speak to anyone with a query or a question, you can speak to a human being. So if you've been inspired, I just wanted you to know that there are some photo book competitions that you can enter. The Australian Photographic Society competition has just finished and been announced for this year, but you can prepare for next year. And there are cash and Momento Pro voucher prizes that you can win. We also host our own awards if you're interested in seeing how you'll go in those. And if you weren't aware, it isn't a photo book award as such, but the Australian Photography Awards, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're definitely worth entering. They've got some great categories, and you know, I really encourage you to give it a shot. But I like their stories category that they introduced this year, where I think you have to present a series of 6 or so images that are all about the same topic. You might want to give that a shot. And that was the photo book comp, and that is it.
Can you just, before you go, Libby, can you just quickly tell everyone how the club thing works? So we've joined as the Aubrey Wodonga Photography Group.
That was the last 2. There we go, look at that. All right, so when I said you had a discount, you receive so you're invited to join our Momento Pro Club program that gives you access to all of the products. You get 30% off your first order, 10% off all other orders. Oh, and that's an old screen there. So you'll have to excuse that last bullet point. But all you have to do is on the website, we've got the join option up here. When you come in, choose the Camera Club option here, and then we will have, play from current slide. In that registration screen, there will be a drop-down menu, are you a member of? And in here, we will now have, did we put you in under which name, Dirk?
There's both of them, the Aubrey Wodonga Photography Group and also Turks Head.
Right, so you can choose the relevant one. And just to let you know, what happens is it might take us a day or so just to get in contact with Dirk and say, are they a legit member of the group? And then he says yes, and then we will approve you in the system, send you an email that gives you your promo code to get your 30% discount, and you're set up in there so that whenever you make an order, you'll always get the 10% discount. And we'll send you an email with links to other information that will help you along the way.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well done. Has anyone got any questions before we finish up?
You go, Pam, or whoever was trying to talk.
What was that, sorry?
Oh, it sounded like someone else was going to talk, and I thought I talked over the top of them.
No, you have the mic.
Oh, okay. With the members, like the finding the club on the screen you're on now.
Yeah.
Do I have, for Dirk, really, do I have to be a part of the Facebook group, or can you go off if I'm a member of the gallery itself?
Yeah, you can choose either. decided to set up both of them because
Okay.
some people aren't in the photography group and some people are members of Turks Head, but either that you choose will be fine.
Yeah, cool.
And I hope that's inspired some of you to go back and look through some of your old photo collections and see what you can find, and to give you a bit of a creative project.
It sure has.
If you're a member of both, does that mean you can get the 30% twice?
There's always one, isn't there?
I knew you'd say that. I knew I had to say that.
No, look, unfortunately, you'll only get that discount once.
It's all right. I've already done a photo book through an opposition that's not Australian a while ago.
Well, we'll still talk to you, but I'd be fascinated to see what you think of the difference in the quality.
Yeah, I agree there.
Yeah, the people, I feel that we have this reputation that we are more expensive than the others. It is more expensive to produce in Australia, that is true. And we do have what we would consider, what people call a higher base price. But if you're adding more, a lot of pages to your book, it pretty much evens out.
It possibly would be more expensive, but then I went for one of their high-end ones, but only because they had a massive, massive discount at the time. Otherwise, I could have never afforded it.
Yeah, no, and look, and that's the thing, we are totally Australian made. We're here in Sydney, in the inner west. We have people, human beings who look at every page, but I can promise you that we will produce the best quality possible. And if you ever did have an issue with your book once you receive the print and you're not happy with the colour, don't ever hesitate to call us. What we do with each book print is we produce a swatch page that is the first page of every book. We obviously don't bind it in your book, but we keep that, and it's our reference point, so that if there is a colour issue, or you contact us with a colour issue, we can identify if the issue was at our end. Now we do our calibrations every day, all throughout the day. Sometimes there might be an issue. If it is, the fault is at our end, we will replace your book at no charge. If the issue is at your end, we'll politely talk you through how you could get better colour. Sometimes people have really, high contrast screens and things like that. But yeah, we will be able to work through that anyway.
Yeah, at some stage I do want to do another book, and yours does look interesting, and yeah, I can see what I should have done with mine, although I am happy with the results that I got. It was not something that, you wouldn't try and sell it to anybody. It was just a record of, I bred horses for many years, and I wanted a record of all the ones that I've bred.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a Momento big table copy book that I could stick on the table for here.
Yeah, perfect. If you wanted any more, if any of you at any point would like some more guidance or examples of books, on the website in the services menu, there is a page called How to Design a Photo Book. And that's got quite a bit of what we talked about tonight, or what I presented tonight, but it's there for you to read, and it links out to a few examples. And if you are ever interested in self-publishing a book, there is a guide in that services menu about how you can self-publish a book as well. But at the same time, you can call our staff for, with any questions. And I suggest you keep an eye on our newsletters and our Instagram and Facebook feed. I post almost daily with, tips on design, or how to use the software, or examples of what our customers have done, other photo book creators' work, things, valuable information. I don't just post dogs with cameras in their mouth.
That could be interesting, though.
To some, yes.
Libby, I just have one more question.
Yeah.
With the number of pages, is there a recommendation for what works the best in terms of the binding being the most secure, and And is there a limit to pages?
Yes. Yes, there is. Good question, and there is a limit, and the software will, the software will alert you to that. It's basically 200 pages for our ones, like our Saturn 170 stock is our most popular stock, so you can do up to 200 pages with the Saturn 170 GSM stock. If you're using the lay flat luster, which is slightly thicker stock, you can only go up to 150 pages. Mind you, 150 pages. So I stand corrected. That would be 120 pages, but that's still a good, decent size book.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. See you, Pam.
Thank you.
Also, I think we'll finish up there. Anyway.
All right, and enjoy your creations. And Dirk, thank you for asking me.
So can I sneak in?
Yes, you can.
30%.
Yeah.
Can you still get your lay flat, or were they not included?
Yep, you can get everything.
That's good, because I like the ones that lay flat.
Yep. And so yes, and be aware that in the Pro service, you can get the lay flat with the luster finish, a gloss finish, or a matte finish as well.
Okay.
Or the other option, which is what we were looking at before, section sewn gives you the lay flat kind of feel without the hinge in the paper.
Because I thought some things were excluded in the 30% discount, but that's different again.
Yeah, that this goes to anyone who is already a member of, say, the Momento service. We wouldn't make that available in Momento, but because you're part of Momento Pro, it is available. And just to clarify, to use that 30% discount, we'll send you a welcome email that has the code in it, and you can use that code.
Okay. Thank you. This has been very informative.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, and I hope you get out of lockdown soon.
I'm sure we will.
Okay, then.
Thanks so much, Libby. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.